Well, good morning, boys and goyim. This is Vince Bird of the 11th Hour Remnant Messenger and the Church of Jesus Christ Christian, coming to you today with a message that's called How Man Has Deceived Man in This Day. And these are great questions for your reality check. Now, on the surface, many of these things won't sound like they're worth mentioning. And you wonder why I would even broach those particular subjects. These are just little snippets that I've gathered over the years. Some of them are dated, but I wanted you to know that as you go about your daily life, thinking you know what's going on around you and with the government and in the world, there are some things that you don't know. And I think that many of these are important to your worldview, to how you think about things, which is what I tend to do a lot of. And so I put these down over the years, and this will probably take a little bit of time. I don't want to get too verbose, but I think they're interesting, and I think they need to be brought to your attention. So I'm going to pose a question, and I'm going to answer it. And again, some of these things may seem mundane and not worthy of mention, but I seem to think they are. I'm going to start with a 2x4. Okay, is a 2x4 really a 2x4? Well, it hasn't been for many years. Nevertheless, when you go to the lumber yard and pick up the 2x4, it's labeled as such. Actually, it's much smaller. It's 1 5/8 by 3 5/8. Well, so what, you might ask? Well, it started when all wood was rough hewn at 2x4, when everyone wanted finished smooth wood. The lumber industry allowed reducing the size without telling the public. Basically, what they did is they planed that wood off, which put it down to the dimensions I just mentioned. Well, the price wasn't reduced, and in fact, most other common lumber sizes were similarly changed without reducing the price to the consumer. Of course, it could be argued that the drop or the waste or the trimmings cost money, and so therefore that should be passed along to the consumer. So if you are a new home builder or hobbyist, make certain that you consider the different sizes of the wood when you lay out the drawings on your house. Okay, this is one I mentioned before. It just galls me. It just irritates the hell out of me. Why does each person pay a different price for an airline seat on the same plane to the same destination? Well, the airlines continue to lie daily about fares and the reasons for the variations. The American people are duped into paying excess prices until they shop well in advance to try and get a better price, but that could change along the way too. The same thing goes for leases on automobiles. You really have to read the fine print. If you lease an automobile, you have a buyback that comes at the end of your term of your lease. Unless you're very cognizant of what that buyback's going to be, it's tied to mileage, it's tied to a couple of other factors that you may or may not know, and you could very well pay more than you were promised and what you thought you were going to pay. Okay, now another thing that irritates the hell out of me, why the hell can't you just go into an auto dealer like you would walk into a grocery store and pick an automobile and pay the price for it and walk out? There isn't an automobile company in the country or a dealership in the country that doesn't offer in 1,000 different ways how they can rebate you $2,000 or $3,000. The ads are they go on and on every day. It's always $2,000 or $3,000, and sometimes on big trucks, which is their most profitable item, they'll come down as much as $6,000 or $8,000. But again, it depends on the time of year, how much inventory the dealer has, and how badly he needs to generate revenue rather than pay interest on his inventory. But Saturn had the right idea. You knew what the price was. You went in and you bought the car. This haggling over with the dealer over so they could squeeze another nickel out of your pocket is just a ball breaker to me. Anyway, has the U.S. funded Russia over the last 70, 75 years, even through the Cold War? Well, absolutely they have. We provided technology. Arm & Hammer snuck it over. He built factories over there. I mean, we were supporting the Russians all through the Cold War. Yeah, we had our ICBMs aimed at each other, 30,000 of them between us, or maybe we had 30,000 and they had 30,000. But the fact of the matter is, we gave our communist friends, and believe me, our United States government is saturated with communists through and through, and we gave our communist friends plenty of technology with which to have this detent that we supposedly had. Okay, so has Russia ever paid any debt to us? No, never, never, ever, never, ever. Okay, has Russia, our ally since the Cold War ended and the Berlin Wall came down in 1989? Well, I'd say no. The press of communism of the world is greater than it's ever been, and they're making more headway than we Westerners are with our capitalistic society and our idea and notion that we want to protect human rights through all these third world sewers that we like to go around and beat the drum about. The fact of the matter is, communism is moving and pressing. They saturate our government. There are communist organizations in the United States that are well known, whether you know it or not. The ACLU is one. These are all front organizations for communists. National Organization of Women, the National Education Association, the teachers. They're mostly communist or have communist leanings. All of academia has communist or communist leanings. The arts, the theater, the movies, most of them are communist or have communist leanings. Where is Joseph McCarthy when you need him? This poor man went to his grave being sneered at and spit upon by everybody in the country, and he was a true patriot. What is the foundation of communism? Well, most think that the doctrines and precepts proposed by Marx, Engels, and Lenin and Trotsky were noble and grand in the beginning. Well, maybe they were. But who were these individuals? Well, they were all Jews, not to be confused with the children of Jacob Israel from the tribe of Judah. These were the Jews from other human stock. They have nothing to do with true blood Israelites and act as emissaries of these true peoples. They are impostors and have nothing to do with the things of God and human rights. Oh, they'll give lip service to it, but they ain't doing it. They and their followers were the force behind the Bolshevik Revolution, which literally destroyed Christian Russia and made it a slave state for more than 70 years. They were responsible for the murder of more than 40 million of the Russian people who disagreed or desired laws who disagreed and desired freedom of expression. The same state of affairs is occurring in the United States today as more oppressive laws are passed every day. Lenin said, "Give me one generation of your children and I will own your nation." Well, the secular humanist school system run by the same Jews, the television media, and our government and the banking system run by these, we have 4 generations already indoctrinated by these evil vipers. Has any nation ever paid their debt to the United States in terms of the money that we loaned them, that we borrowed to give them, or through the International Monetary Fund, for which we provide most of the funds, or the World Bank, for which we provide most of the funds by borrowing it? Well, none of these nations have ever paid us. Every time the United States guarantees a loan or offers it to a foreign nation, the loan is made through the World Bank or IMF. The World Bank earns income from interest on all transactions. They are never at risk. Get that? They are never at risk. We are. The loans are always paid in full by the taxpayers, first of the United States, then the taxpayers of other developing countries or developed countries. The third world nations keep borrowing to pay interest on their loans but never pay down their principal. The World Bank and the Jewish bankers of the world, international banking system, they don't really care as long as they get the interest. It's all fiat paper anyway. So has the U.S. funded every modern dictator? Well, we can go back as far as Fernando Marcos, Park in Korea, Dien in Vietnam, and Aristide, Gorbachev, Mandela. It goes on, and every dictator and despot that exists in Afghanistan and Iraq since we liberated those people are being paid serious amounts of money by the United States government. Is every dictator a multimillionaire? Well, virtually every despot is funded off budget by the United States government and have squirreled money away in foreign bank accounts to the tune of billions of taxpayers' dollars or borrowed money from the international Jew bankers. What did the U.S. get for this investment? Well, nothing except the murder and mayhem of millions to assure the power base of those dictators in those respective countries. And I would only direct your attention to the invasion of Iraq, Desert Storm. Okay, after Desert Shield, when our soldiers were ferreting about the nation of Iraq in various cities and the palaces that were owned by Saddam Hussein, they found pallets of $100 bills. Now, where do you suppose those $100 bills came from? Do you think they came from Germany? Do you think they came from China? Do you think they came from Latin America? No, these were $100 bills, United States currency, pallets of them. Billions and billions of dollars. How do you suppose Saddam got that? Do you think he hijacked the United States Treasury, came in the still of the night with his forces and overtook the Fort Knox and converted the gold into $100 bills? No, we gave it to him. Okay, is every congressman with more than 2 terms leave with more wealth than he arrived? Well, check the record. With the exception of a small number, you can count on one hand. In the last 40 years, all left Congress more prosperous than when they arrived as a result of their connections, kickbacks, benefits, perks, you name it. Okay. Who is on the board of the directors of the Federal Reserve Board? Now, most of you fools out there really believe that the Federal Reserve Board, because it says federal, is an arm of the United States government. It has nothing whatsoever to do with the United States government. When Chairman Bernanke, or back in the day Greenspan, and back in the day Volcker, and back in the day keep going back, all of these Jews who head the Federal Reserve Bank supposedly are put there by the United States government. They are not. When Bernanke goes to the Hill, he is not kowtowing to any congressman or senator. He's telling them what the Federal Reserve is going to do, because it's an independently owned private organization owned by the international Jewish bankers, not the least of which are the Warburg family and the Rothschilds and many others. Okay, so the Constitution has been redefined by the Supreme Court in the last 50 years. Well, has it? Well, I'll give you some examples of how it's changed. Okay, the liberal court has been ensconced over the last 40 years, has rendered new definitions to nearly all of the Bill of Rights. This has been totally supported and reinforced by the double-speak Congress during the same period. What is the meaning intent of the First Amendment? Do you know? Well, do you really know? The Supreme Court has redefined this amendment, as well as every other, to propagate their agendas and that of the New World Order folks. And they do exist, ladies and gentlemen. The Supreme Court allows that the American flag may be desecrated. Okay? The evil, vile, and contemptible activities and conduct is protected and sanctioned. It has removed every moral absolute from the original intent and spirit of the founders and moved into secular, humanist, existentialist doctrine. Separation of church and state has gone far beyond the founding fathers' intent and purpose. This is a Christian-founded republic. The National Church of America is the Christian church, notwithstanding the various denominations that exist here. No other church is a legitimate church or theology required by us Adamic Hebrew Israelite Christians, God's chosen. If we do not speak against these false religions, if you do not reinstate prayer in the Ten Commandments in all public buildings and schools, if you do not overturn every Supreme Court ruling against the newly defined separation of church and state, then you will perish by the rising violence that will occur in this land and is occurring every day. Freedom of speech is leaning to the politically correct only. Any who holds beliefs that the place the Adamic Hebrew Israelites is in more favorable light than any other people of the United States is vilified as racist, anti-Semitic, bigot, and white supremacists. So what is the meaning of the Second Amendment? Well, do you really know? The right to bear arms by every individual shall not be infringed upon. The wording is very clear, leaving no doubt. It allows for no misinterpretation. The intent of the drafters of this amendment was to protect the American citizen from their very own government. There is no doubt about this. This is to prevent tyranny and dictatorial powers now being enjoyed by our president under his executive orders. The amendment was so written that it allowed for the citizenry to be at least as well armed as the government. And this would include fighter jets, tanks, and missiles, from my perspective. These should be available to the citizenry on an open retail market. A government that disallows the possession of weapons, particularly those that are classified as small arms, has ulterior motives and operates to the contrary of the Constitution. What is the meaning and intent of the Fourth Amendment? Do you really know? Well, Congress passed laws that removed the Constitution's protection from illegal search and seizure. We can thank our dear President Bush and his administration for the Patriot Act. Under what is known as zero tolerance and SBA. Beware as those government officials working under the Department of Justice continue to act like SS stormtroopers as they have for the several years that have gone by. All you have to do is look at Ruby Ridge, Randy Weaver, the siege that was there, and they killed Randy's wife and son and his dog and had no remorse for any of it. Also, David Koresh and the Branch Davidians at Waco, Texas. Never forget that. That's your stormtroopers working against a church. 80 men, women, and children were burned to death by the gassing that the government did with their tank, putting Zyklon B in there and lighting it afire. There were FBI snipers keeping the Davidians in the building. From the back of the building, there were FLIR helicopters showing pictures of these snipers in the back of the compound while the building was burning. Is there an ozone problem, and who says so? An ozone layer problem? Well, there is no ozone problem. There never will be, and there never can be. The government departments, the NASA, EPA, Air Quality Board, and the rest, the environmentalists particularly, generate the data, and the institutions funded by the government and supported big business and the New World Order folks. The agenda is to outlaw certain commodity items that previously were protected by patents and no longer are. A general patent issued by a corporation or granted to a corporation generally lasts 25 years and no longer. Well, when those patents expire, the first thing they do is claim foul, and halon is a classic example from the DuPont Corporation. It is the most effective fire extinguisher known on the planet, but yet they had to get rid of it because of environmental conditions and its potential harm to a human being if they were in proximity to it as it was released to kill the fire. But the fact of the matter is the DuPont patent ran out, and so the government was forced by DuPont to outlaw it anyway. So, has Russia ever honored a treaty? I keep bouncing back to Russia. These you people think that old Putin and Medvedev are our buddies, are our newfound buddies. It's still communism, and as I said before, they just put on a pretty face, call it, change their name, and go about the world very nice. But this is the 8th perestroika, ladies and gentlemen. 8. We're in the middle of the 8th perestroika. Believe me, when they shut it down, it's going to be shut down again. Russia is going to be a force. It is a force. They're moving communism about the world almost without any kind of intervention. Okay, so has Russia ever honored a treaty? Well, they'll tell you, they'll sign any document there is, and we will. And so we'll remove, what do they call the missile that we had in Europe? I forget. It escapes me at the moment. We moved ours out, so and the Russians were supposed to retreat all short-range missiles beyond the Ural Mountains. Well, we moved ours, they never moved theirs. The treaty is only honored by Russia if it's convenient to do so. Otherwise, it means nothing to them because, to a Jew and to communism, they can say and do anything. Their honor is not in their word, their honor is not in the contract, their honor is not in a treaty. So get that through your thick heads. Okay, does Congress and the government hide money from our U.S. citizens? Well, of course they do. All covert activities of the government, within the government, are funded by off-budget, so there is no scrutiny by the public at large. You will never know where that money goes or what they're doing with it. They certainly ferret enough way to send billions of dollars to Saddam Hussein. I challenge you to find that on any congressional budget or from any GAO accounting investigation. Billions of dollars disappear every day from the United States government that we have to borrow, or the money is printed. Another issue is 3 tiers of money in the United States. There's the first tier is what you get to walk around with and put in your pocketbook every day and maybe move in your bank account. There's a second tier of money that deals with electronic blips that move around the country from major corporations in the government and between them and each other. Then there's a third tier of money which is dealing with gold bullion and the financing between nations and nation states. So there's all kinds of things going on in this world that you have no clue. Okay, so does AIDS virus kill every person infected? Why is there no quarantine to eliminate disease? Well, ladies and gentlemen, because it wasn't politically correct to do so. Back in the day, if you even had tuberculosis, you were quarantined and you were put in what they call I want to say it's a hospital. And and there was no other persons in that hospital except people with TB. And if the local authorities found out there was tuberculosis in a home, you had a little yellow tag put on your home. You couldn't leave. You couldn't. Nobody could come into your home. I remember my father had tuberculosis, and we were quarantined, and people would leave bags of groceries from the church on our porch so that we had food to eat because my father could no longer work, and there were no entitlements in those days. Okay, so virus does kill everybody once the HIV has been transmutated into the full-blown AIDS. So we don't quarantine them. We give them different kinds of drugs that cost tens of thousands of dollars every few months, and this helps big pharma, and that's the idea. Did the AIDS virus come from a monkey, or is it man-made? Well, AIDS is a political issue, not a health issue in any way, shape, or form. If it were a health issue, the law would quarantine all affected. There is sufficient evidence to support that AIDS is man-made, mutating from the bovine virus, cattle, and the Visna from sheep. This was introduced by the World Health Organization in Africa by inoculating for influenza, and in the United States in the late 1970s under the guise of inoculating for hepatitis B. In a prior presentation I said Hep A and smallpox, but it was for influenza and Hep B in the gay centers of five major enclave cities. Whether the inoculating teams were aware of what they were injecting into these people was probably unlikely. There can be no cure found aside from the antidote that probably does exist in the laboratories of the World Health Organization or the CDC, or for sure at Fort Detrick, who manufactured the HIV virus. The mutated virus further mutates in the host and begins to debilitate the immune system. As a result, every individual infected has a different, unique strain that can only be treated specifically. Therefore, a different antibody must be formulated for each person infected, an impossible task. every person infected that is transmutated to acquired immune deficiency will die. Okay, does Congress write bills to undermine the freedoms of its citizens? Well, let me tell you this. There are 25 million laws on the books. There are over 3,000 being written every year. And they're written purportedly to improve the lives of our fellow American citizens. There are more laws on the books than any citizen can realistically comply with each day. It is unlikely that it is likely that every citizen is breaking a law at least once a day, one or the other. And while the American public enjoys greater freedoms than most of the nations of the world, as compared to 50 years ago, we are seriously more oppressed. As at the current declination of freedoms, it is possible that we can be totalitarian within 10 years, and if Obama, Ben Mama, Mama, Obama, Mama, Mama, your president, not mine, is reelected, you can be assured that you will be living under a dictatorship by the end of his next term. Okay, are the oceans polluted? Well, yeah, mankind with his great ego has a belief that he is able to affect the earth in such a way as to degrade it. All pollution is localized to the polluters. Nature's cycles continually clean and replenish. When one considers the earthquakes, hurricanes, lightning strikes, tornadoes, cyclones, and volcanic activity that occur daily in the world, what man does is minute by comparison. Only the nuclear capabilities of the powers of the world are able to sufficiently unleash enough havoc to make a difference to mankind, and releasing biological agents that can decimate a human being, but it won't do much to affect the earth. Okay, is there an environmental problem with tree burning, animal extinction, wet land loss? Well, most of the oxygen required by mankind comes from the ocean. Don't believe it comes from bushes, trees, and plants. And it does come from the grasses of the world. While there should be a carefully planned harvesting of trees for consumption, the idea that we can and should prevent any kind of harvesting is another myth of the environmentalist without substantiated proof. Now, I have to somewhat take issue even with my own statement. I made several airplane trips when I was living up north, Idaho, Montana, Washington State, and if you get off the main highways and byways from the automobile, you will see the clear cutting that's occurred and the bad forest management that people like Simplot and Boise Cascade and those others who clear cut trees. You don't see them from the highways because they were clever enough to do their dastardly deeds behind the mountains and in the valleys. But when you fly over, you can see it, and it's not a pretty sight. Now, that's the clear cutting that occurred somewhere up until about 25 years ago. They are being properly managed in their cutting now. For every tree they cut, my recollection is they plant 10. That's good management. And besides which, over time, the trees will drop their seeds and will grow, but it takes decades decades to realize that. What is the best? Well, I talked about that. Now here's an interesting story I'm going to tell you. Did George Bush the first, did he fund the drug activities of Noriega while he was, director of the CIA? Well, there is no public record of such, but there certainly is a public record in video and in photographs of George Bush shaking hands with Emmanuel Noriega in Panama back in the day, and we all knew that Panama was a midpoint drop-off for the drug trade that came out of Colombia, cocaine trade. And what would happen is the cocaine cartels would get the cocaine to Panama, and our military aircraft under control of the CIA or as front groups for the CIA would move those drugs into the United States and other places in the world so that the cocaine traffic could continue. And of course the CIA, being off budget, reporting only to the President of the United States, there was no way of knowing how much money flowed and was profits that were made by the CIA. Okay, so we know that the CIA is a covert arm of the United States government within the government, and it does run drugs, and it does protect shipments, and does protect the drug trade, among other things. Okay, now here's what happened. George Bush was the head of the CIA back in the day, and he was largely responsible for making sure that Emmanuel Noriega was made president after Trujillo was killed in an airplane crash. Be careful if you screw with the government, you're going to end up in an airplane crash. Well, anyway, after George Bush became president, he realized that Noriega was taking a bigger rake than that they had agreed upon. So Bush went down there with his Marines and sieged Panama, the palace, and brought Noriega back. And Noriega spent 17 years in the United States prison for his rake of more than he should have taken. Now the French have him, I guess, and they're going to prosecute him for hiding money or not paying taxes or who knows what. Anyway, has the United States allowed Japan, Taiwan, China, and Korea to dump their goods? Why would they want to do that? Well, all legitimate wealth of a nation can only come about as a result of productivity. There is no other way. The productive capability of the United States has been relegated to the third world and developing countries. It is a plan to weaken the United States and make it a second-rate power in the New World Order agenda, and the New World Order does exist. Goods are manufactured cheaper in these client nations and sold to the American consumer, supposedly to make our lives easier and better. In fact, every commodity manufactured is to entertain and occupy the minds of the American public, dumbing it down and promoting ignorance except in the mundane and trivial. This includes automobiles, televisions, telephones, radios, computers, stereos, fax machines, and every other kind of commodity. Most people in America are jobless because of this, and more are working harder to purchase these worthless goods and going in debt to do so. Okay, are animals more important than people? Ask the Sierra Club and over 20,000 other environmental organizations, all including the Sierra Club and the Greenpeace communist front groups. Okay. The agenda of the environmental groups, whether government or private, is to eliminate the private use of land and to destroy the American worker who earns his living from this land. 5 major corporations control more than 80% of the food supply in America. The farmer has been decimated and is losing his farm equipment and generations of family livelihood as a result of these policies. You must ask yourself, who funds these organizations behind the straw corporations who seemingly do? When you understand who is behind them, you will clearly see what the agenda is. Capital punishment does not deter crime. Well, this is rhetoric has been propounded by the ACLU, the socialist and liberal faction of America, for more than 50 years. It is a lie. It reeks of misinformation, and next to accepting the tenets of Jesus Christ, is the only deterrent to evilness and wicked behavior. The real problem lies in the fact that there is no swift punishment for the wrongs of criminals. Criminals who are found guilty beyond any doubt, especially those who repeatedly perform criminal acts, and particularly those who perform criminal violent acts, must be dealt with severely. These criminals must be prosecuted swiftly and punished directly. There should be no plea bargaining except with minor offenses and the first-time offenders and of those minor offenses. Penalties should be consistent nationwide and published in the papers daily. It would be a simple task to develop a penalty structure for various offenses, including extenuating circumstances. Well, they tried to do that with the sentencing guidelines that the courts have today. And am I still running? Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Okay, they tried to do it with the sentencing guidelines, but the sentencing guidelines are so convoluted that that people are getting longer sentences, and I'm going to do that. I had a request come into me from one of my watchers on YouTube that asked me who had received my book, Crimes and Punishment 2010, How the Feds Conspire to Screw You. And they asked me to run this on the internet. Well, I'm not getting any buys, and I can't afford to self-publish, and I can't get a publisher to pick it up. So I may just run that on the internet, and I'm going to tell you all about the criminal injustice system and how they set about to screw you, the American citizen. Okay. So was the war in Vietnam of any interest to the United States? I talked about that earlier. I'm not going to do that again. Same with Korea. Okay, who is the richest man in America? Notwithstanding the Rothschilds, who are not American citizens or maybe dual citizenship. It's the Rockefeller family, the Rockefeller dynasty. Everybody talks about Warren Buffett and Gates and soon Zuckerman and the founders of Google. Well, the fact of the matter is they are penny pinchers compared to the likes of the Rockefeller dynasty, who you never hear about. And I talk about him in another presentation. Is the stock market a freely operating system? Is it manipulated? Well, the entire markets are all manipulated. The commodities markets are manipulated. The arbiters are manipulated. It's all manipulated. It's manipulated by the specialists and the institutional brokers and the international bankers. They move it up and down. Sometimes they lose control and it moves in the wrong direction due to forces and dynamics and computers that don't have stops in the movement of the market. Okay, so with the advent of the new investing instrument, not so new anymore, called derivatives, it is the first time in the history of the world that every economic asset of every free nation can be traded each day. Upwards of $200 trillion are available on world markets, crossing every national boundary. This now sets the stage for a worldwide economic collapse that could have never happened before. It may interest you to know that the Dow Jones Industrials, the 30 stocks that they placed in there, which the NYSE bases its performance in terms of the health of the market, is staged with a number of companies, 30, any one of which is periodically replaced if they are poorly performing. So it's all an illusion. It's all smoke and mirrors. It's all keeping the ball in the air. This deception continually buoys the stated value of the market in general, unless there is an overall market change that brings the Dow with it. Okay, are the metals of the markets, are the metal markets of the world manipulated? Totally. Gold, silver, platinum, nickel, copper, and all the others are controlled by a small number of individuals. No metals market or commodities market operates freely anymore. I talked about diamonds before. Are all drugs illegal? How about caffeine? How about alcohol? How about nicotine? Well, while the government spends untold millions of dollars warning the public about the effects of drugs, the effects of alcohol, about the effects of tobacco, and the millions more defending the borders against smuggling of these items, it only reflects the hypocrisy of the government. It supports the tobacco industry with subsidies while conducting sham and congressional investigations of the industry. This is a pathetic joke, except to those who are baited into using the drug to begin with. Okay. Well, is there inflation? What causes inflation? Do wage increases cause inflation? Well, by now you should all know what inflation is, but here it is. The government continually tells we citizens of the United States that any number of things causes inflation except the real thing. The only way there can be inflation is if the government prints more money, period. The government prints more money to support the requirement of the Federal Reserve Board and to have enough money in circulation to pay the interest dues on the principals owed to all the New World Order bankers ultimately. You can verify this for yourself. Who funds the ACLU, and why do they never support or defend conservative or moral absolutes or causes? Well, without question, the ACLU is funded by socialist and communistic New World Order subsidies, including the international Jew bankers. This is easily verifiable through county records and further research into their sources, or further research into the sources of their income. Okay, how does the minority dictate government policy and laws when we are a republic? Or are we a democracy? Well, we are no longer a republic. We haven't been a republic for a long time. To the republic for which we stand, no longer, haven't been. This is rhetorical. The United States isn't a republic intended by the founding fathers, founded on Christian principles. We are holding to a remnant of democracy, running headlong into a dictatorship within a few years, as evidenced by the frequency of executive orders exercised by our last 3 presidents. Minorities motivated by the ACLU and others of similar agendas do rule and set public policy, carefully avoiding pressing hard against public confrontation on critical issues so as not to rile the sleeping middle class taxpayers. Are federal wage taxes on wage earners legal? What does the bill says that makes it so? I would direct your attention to my video presentation, Is the IRS Legal? Has the government ever lied about a tax increase? Without a doubt, each and every time taxes are mentioned. The United States government has lied to American taxpayer every time it purports and convenes to offer tax reduction. The tired old story of the rich paying the taxes and the burden of the taxes are on the middle class is a myth that America buys into every day. The poor pay no income tax. The middle class pay most of the income tax, and the rich pay more than anybody else. But you can hear the rhetoric from the communist left, workers unite mantra group, run by the Jew and the New World Order elite. We're going to tax the rich and tax our way out of these economic problems we have. The only way you can solve the economic problem in America is through productivity and the communist New World Order agenda that permeates our Congress with all the Jews that sit there, Feinstein, Boxer, Schumann, Frank, all of them don't want that. They don't want America to be productive. They don't want you working in a meaningful job, realizing the American dream, putting your kids through school, taking nice vacations after your work your 50 weeks a year to slave for not the king or the noble or the landowner, but for the corporation. Can a practicing physician recommend holistic or alternative medicine? Well, he can only prescribe medical procedure or drug approved by the American Medical Association, the Food and Drug Administration. If you do anything else beside that or exceed those boundaries, you're going to go to prison. These guys own the country. They don't want alternative methods in the country, and I would direct your attention to Dr. Brzezinski in Houston, Texas, and the pain and anguish that he went through because he had a cure for cancer. And the AMA and FDA didn't want that cure for cancer. They want to cut, slash, and burn and have you paying billions of dollars in donations to find a cure for cancer for these Jews who gravitate towards oncology and cutting babies from the bellies of white women. Okay. Do doctors work in concert with the pharmaceutical companies and the large facilities, medical facilities do? Well, absolutely. All the research is funded in the universities is funded by the pharmaceutical companies. So, that's it. That's what the doctors learn. They learn how to drug if they're not highly specialized, and the pharmaceutical representative that comes to visit them that day or any given week will tell them probably what drugs they need to prescribe to their unknowing clients. Okay, what causes clogged arteries? Well, we know what that is. Busing minorities, I talked about that. Are graduates brighter than they were 25 years ago? Hardly. I'm going to tell you something. The education system that served us up until and through part of the 1960s served us very well as a nation, as a culture, and as a people. With a slide rule and some calculus, our scientists and engineers designed the fastest flying aircraft, the locomotives of the world, all the modern inventions that you see and enjoy. The integrated circuit, computers, it goes on. And they did it without the likes of computers. They did it without the likes of, we sent a man to the moon with rudimentary computers. He never landed, but we went there. We've done magnificent things, and we did it with primers from the one-room schoolhouses 150 to 100 years ago, and we did it with the reading, writing, arithmetic that we learned. Tom, Dick, and Spot, Dick, Jane, and Harry, or Dick, Jane, and Spot. Watch Spot run. Doing our cursors on the board, the blackboard, doing simple mathematics. We could do square root on a piece of paper, no problem. Now we have all kinds of things being taught in school, but our people graduating are gravitating towards non-technical because they're ignorant fools or stupid, and they don't understand the complex things of math. And frankly, I never did either. I was never good at math, chemistry. I was good at physics. You figure it out. But the point is, we had an education system that served us very well. And since the 60s, our education system, due to busing and affirmative actions and all kinds of New World Order and social engineering agendas, has diminished we whites in America to the extent that unless we go seek ourselves to teach ourselves, we'll never get it in a public school. That for all intent and purpose, they should shut all public schools down, and we got to get to homeschooling, charter schools, get people in there who want to teach, and other people, and the students who really want to learn. Otherwise, we're doomed. I mean, we're already doomed for a number of reasons, but we are doomed. We have third world countries, China and India particularly, who are graduating thousands of engineers because they are told to have an interest in those subjects, and they are steeped in that through their childhood by their parents and the school system that they attend, whether they have to do it by force or however they do it. The fact is, these people are graduating more engineers. Do you want to be run by a third world sewer group of people? It's up to you. Because you can stop this. Okay, the educational standards lowers food loss, nutritional value. Well, of course we have. We've got genetically engineered food from the major growers, Archer, Daniel, Midland, Monsanto. These people produce the seeds that the farmer uses. They set the market price, and they either make or break the farmer if there are any left, and so there you are. We've lost our nutritional value. The minerals are gone out of the soil. Well, we're contaminating our food with steroids. We feed our cows in mass feeding areas with animal meat, animal product, and they should be eating grains and grass, but we want them, and we want them big, and we want them fast, and we want them fat, so that they can go to market quick and butcher them. But you don't know what you're eating. You don't know how much is changing your DNA. The things that we're being bombarded with every day in our food products are electromagnetic and electromotive forces that are hitting us in microwaves, satellite transmissions, television emissions, fluorescent lights. These things are altering your DNA, however little it is. But over time, and we won't know because we'll be dead by the time the third and fourth generation from us comes about, but we are the generation of those who has enjoyed every one of those things, not our grandparents. They never saw any of it. Okay, is there any gold in Fort Knox? Where'd it go? Well, they say there is. They probably left a pallet or two so they go and take pictures of it. But there ain't no gold in Fort Knox, believe me. Is the money backed to buy anything in the United States? Well, we used to issue silver certificates, right? We used to have $1,000 bills and $10,000 bills. Well, we don't have a $500 bill. We don't have any of those anymore. And we have a note, a Federal Reserve note. That means you owe them. Okay? That is a note that belongs to them. So you owe them that note in the end. Okay, when did it go away? Well, they took it away. Is the phrase New World Order on our money? Well, why is it? Well, it isn't called exactly the New World Order. It's called exactly announcing the birth of a new secular order. Annuit septis novus ordo seclorum, which is on the Great Seal, the pyramid, on every $1 bill. This was placed there many years ago to set the stage for these end time events in America. Remember our fearless President George Bush, who first announced these words at the start of the Gulf War. He used the phrase more than 200 times since then. Are we to believe that there's no significance in this? We realize that the American public is lethargic in their sleep, and we find the church just as lethargic. Is the pyramid on the money occultic? Well, why is it there to begin with? Well, some might argue that the Great Pyramid of Giza was built by Enoch. I happen to believe that. But the pyramid on the bill is purely Masonic and occultic in nation in its origin. The all-seeing eye is satanic in every respect, and is Satan hiding under every rock? No, he's standing in front of you everywhere. Get into the Gulf War. Yeah, why we went there. The commanding general forces of the United Nations until about 10 years ago was a Russian general. So when we put our blue hats on and command our soldiers, and there were a few not too long ago that refused to go fight under the United Nations banner because he was one smart, intelligent, erudite soldier. He said he wasn't going to put on a blue hat. He owed his honor to the United States of America and to our Constitution that he swore to protect, not the goddamn United Nations, and not even NATO anymore. Okay, United Nations peacekeepers. That's an oxymoron. PDD 25, signed by William Jefferson Clinton, put our military under the auspices of the United Nations, if the United Nations so chooses to grab us as the soldiers and police force of the New World Order. Was Ronald Reagan an effective president? You hear a lot of that from the conservative radio and television talk hosts. Reagan was a nice guy. He was fun to watch. He was fun to listen to. I wrote a little article of how I caused Ronald Reagan to be president. It was a short story. It's fiction, but I had a lot of fun with it. The fact of the matter is, when Reagan took office, we were a creditor nation. We had no debt, and the nations of the world owed us billions of dollars. Well, when 8 years went by, Reagan left office, we owed $4 trillion to the international bankers. So there you go. And I get into seat belts, airbags. You know, I did a study. We contacted the Department of Transportation, and we got the data on airbags. How many lives have been saved with airbags in the last, since Mercedes-Benz put them in their cars and they were introduced to the United States automobile industry some 20 years ago? The Department of Transportation gave us the actuary on it, and the hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars that the American consumer spends in added values to the cars that these airbags have been placed in. 1,800 lives have been confirmed to have been saved by an airbag. But yet there was some on the order of about 150 lives that were lost because the airbag exploded and broke a person's neck or killed a child or any number of things. So, listen, it's these little things. It's these little things that we live with every day that you come to accept. Checkpoints as you cross the borders between states, especially California. They want to check your veggies. Yeah, right. No, they're getting used to checkpoints. You start traveling north from any of the southern tier states that border Mexico, within 30 to 40 miles, you'll see a U.S. Customs blockade, and you have to go through there, and they're going to check you. They're going to ask you where you're from and where you're going. Checkpoint. We're going to get at that. Well, pretty soon you're going to have travel documents to travel from one state to another, or to leave your job and go on vacation, and all kinds of things. This is coming, ladies and gentlemen. I'm not paranoid because I'm telling you the truth. Okay, then we talk about prayer out of school. I already did a thing on that, and that covers it. Listen, I love you guys, I really do, but you got to get educated here. You people are walking around in a fog. I know you got a lot of things to distract you. You got all these shows on television. You like your beer and your sports, and you got them soccer moms taking their kids, and that's good. We want to keep the family unit together and all of that. But there's shit going on all around you don't know about, and you don't think it affects you, but it affects you every day, and it's taking away more and more of your freedoms. And we have a dictator, Obama, Obama. You know. He's a New World Order sycophant. He's got, he's a puppet. The guys are moving his strings every day. He gets a phone call probably every night about 3 in the morning. Okay, guy, here's what you're going to do today. Here's how you're going to say it. Listen, he's the most eloquent president we've ever had. I don't care whether he reads off a monitor or what. This guy is sharp. Don't take anything away from him. I hate him. I can't even watch him. I can't even look at him for more than 15 seconds. I can't reach the button fast enough or the dial on the radio. He just grieves my spirit. And it isn't because he's black. Hell, I can watch black people do all kinds of things, talk, give opinions, whatever. But this man is very dangerous. He's evil. He permeates evil. And he's a master at it. So, but he is not his own man. Believe me, he is not his own man. Now, this guy has $10 million. Where did this guy get $10 million? Right? This is after he comes out of a community whatever organizer, and then he is a senator for a brief time, and he's elevated to presidency from nowhere, a black man in America in that short a time. The fix was in, and the fix is going to be in this election. I predict that Obama will win again unless he steps on his weenie along the way, because Romney is no competition for this demagogue that sits in the White House now, who's going to garner nearly $1 billion to assure his election by his campaigns, advertising, and media attention. The media, he's the darling of the media. I love him. Anyway, I'm done. I hope you got something today. I had fun doing it. You didn't get half of it. You didn't get a third of it. These are things that I've been putting down in as I see them, and I try and draw my analysis. Again, there's nothing but truth here. It's all you're going to get. No opinion, not based on emotion. These are all facts. You can look them up for yourself. Anyway, this is Vince Burt, the 11th Hour Remnant Messenger, signing off. Have fun. Bye.